The great chamber of the Galactic Council was filled with voices that rose and fell like waves crashing against stone. Creatures of every size and shape gathered beneath the shimmering dome of light, their scaled, feathered, and armored bodies glowing faintly under the artificial stars. It was meant to be a place of order, a place where the future of countless worlds was discussed with seriousness. But today it felt more like a theater. At the center of the floor, a hollow screen projected images of Earth, its blue oceans and green lands rotating slowly, and the audience of alien leaders erupted with laughter. Humans had entered the wider galaxy only a short time ago. Their ships were clumsy, their weapons outdated, and their biology weak compared to the towering reptilians, the cold insectoids, and the long-lived crystalline beings that filled the council seats. To the proud empires, humanity was nothing but a child playing with tools it could not understand. The reports read aloud by the council herald spoke of human lifespans barely crossing a century, of their fragile bones and soft skin, of their naive belief that they could stand equal among species who had mastered space. Before humans had even learned fire, the words were followed by laughter that echoed across the chamber, sharp and cruel, as if mocking a joke told 1,000 times. Yet not every voice joined in the mockery. On the far edge of the chamber, a small figure cloaked in gray tapped his claws against the metal surface, his eyes fixed on the images of Earth. He was a historian, old and quiet, who had studied records buried beneath dust and time. He leaned closer to the alien beside him and whispered that he had seen these symbols before, carved into ruins on forgotten moons and dead planets. They resembled Earth's oldest languages, patterns repeated across worlds that had fallen millions of years ago. But when he tried to speak louder, when he raised his trembling voice to the chamber, the laughter swallowed him whole. The council dismissed his words as the ramblings of age. They insisted that humans were nothing but a fleeting species, destined to fade as countless others had. A giant insectoid, its mandibles clicking with amusement, declared that humanity was lucky even to be mentioned in the grand archives of the council. A reptilian warlord hissed that humans would never survive the coming centuries among the stars, for they were too divided, too weak, and too foolish to build a true empire. The laughter grew again, rolling like thunder, while the human envoy who had come to witness the meeting sat silent in the corner, their face pale but their eyes burning with quiet fire. Outside the council, the galaxy shared the same sentiment. News transmissions carried images of human ships side by side with advanced alien cruisers, mocking comparisons drawn for entertainment across countless worlds. Young aliens watched hollows where humans were depicted as clumsy creatures stumbling through space. Merchants sold toys carved in human shape, painted with ridiculous expressions, while comedians across the stars turned humanity into the punchline of every joke. The galaxy was united in scorn, but mockery has a weight. It presses down not only on the victim but also on the ones who laugh, for laughter can blind the eyes and deafen the ears. In their endless scorn, the aliens failed to see the unease growing in the quiet corners of the galaxy. They ignored the scattered ruins discovered on forgotten planets, ruins that seemed to respond faintly when touched by human hands. They ignored the whispers of ancient explorers who had once written about a race that burned like fire through the stars, only to vanish without a trace. And they ignored the way humans themselves began to feel something stir deep in their bones, an echo of something older than history, something that none of their teachers had spoken of but all of them could sense. In the council chamber, the laughter continued until it filled the air like a storm that refused to pass. The historian tried once more to warn them, his voice breaking as he spoke of star maps and forgotten bloodlines, but again he was silenced. The council leader, a crystalline being whose voice rang like chimes, declared that humanity's place was at the lowest seat of the galaxy, a child under the watch of greater civilizations. The humans, he said, should be grateful for even being allowed to step foot among the stars. The declaration brought cheers, and the session ended with arrogance shining brighter than wisdom. As the chamber emptied, the human envoy remained seated for a long time, staring at the hologram of Earth still spinning above the floor. Their hands tightened into fists, but no words passed their lips. They had heard the laughter, they had seen the scorn, but deep within them was a feeling they could not explain. It was not only anger, it was recognition, as though the ruins and whispers the aliens mocked were not foreign to them but familiar. Like a song half remembered in dreams, the envoy rose at last and walked out into the wide halls of the council building. The laughter still echoed in the distance, but it no longer felt sharp. It felt hollow, as though the galaxy itself was trying to hide its own fear behind cruel jokes. The stars outside the window burned silently, watching as they always had, and in their glow there was no mockery, only patience. The galaxy believed it had seen humanity clearly, a fragile and foolish species stumbling into greatness it did not deserve. But the galaxy had not seen everything. Buried beneath the surface of forgotten worlds, locked inside relics of ages past and hidden within the blood of every human, was a truth that no laughter could erase. The Council had mocked, the empires had laughed, but soon they would remember that the universe itself does not play with children. It plays with its oldest heirs, and humanity was far older than anyone dared to believe. And so the mockery ended not in silence, but in a shadow that stretched unseen across the stars, waiting for the moment when laughter would turn into terror. The council chambers had fallen quiet, but outside their shining walls, exploration fleets continued to move across the galaxy. Countless expeditions drifted into forgotten regions, searching for minerals, abandoned outposts, and ancient technology that could be claimed and sold. Most crews thought of their work as routine, but slowly patterns began to emerge. On barren moons where no life had stirred for millions of years, explorers found ruins carved with symbols. The markings were jagged at first, meaningless scratches, but when compared against Earth's oldest cave writings, they aligned too closely to be dismissed. Letters and shapes that humans had carved into stone ages ago appeared here, far beyond the reach of their fragile ships. At first, these findings were laughed away, treated as coincidence. Archaeologists hired by the Council gave speeches explaining that the galaxy had always shared echoes of design, that patterns repeated across civilizations without meaning. Yet more ruins appeared, scattered across the spiral arms of the galaxy, each carrying fragments of the same language. Entire star systems once thought empty revealed crumbling structures of impossible size, their walls etched with the same spirals and lines children on Earth had drawn in clay thousands of years ago. The truth was difficult to ignore when an abandoned station was discovered in orbit around a dead sun. Its architecture was alien yet strangely familiar, and its power core had long since turned to dust. Within its archives, fragments of data were recovered, data that matched human DNA. The recordings were damaged, nothing more than pulses of fading sound, but when analyzed, the signatures mirrored the exact genetic code of modern humans. The Council gathered in secret meetings to discuss the implications, but even then many tried to dismiss it. They claimed that humans were lucky to share similarities with an older race, nothing more. But beneath their words was unease. Whispers began to circulate through the fleets. Captains reported that strange devices activated in the presence of human crew members, glowing faintly as though recognizing them. An expedition brought a human scientist near one of the relics found on a desert planet, and the structure responded by opening doors that had remained sealed for ages. The scientist swore he felt something in the air, a pulse that ran through his blood, calling him forward. His words spread quickly among human settlers across the colonies, and many began to wonder if these ruins belonged not to strangers but to ancestors. The Council tried to silence such talk, but the evidence grew louder with every discovery. The historian who had once been mocked for speaking in the chamber found his voice carried further now. He presented star maps that aligned with both the ruins and Earth's constellations, proving that the designs had been created with knowledge of Earth's skies. He showed artifacts that resonated with human touch, refusing to respond to any alien hands. Still, most leaders scoffed, not because they believed the historian was wrong, but because they feared what it meant if he was right. For if humans were not young, then the story of the galaxy itself was broken. The empires that believed they had ruled for millions of years would suddenly find themselves cast in the shadow of a species they had ridiculed. The thought of it was unbearable, so they chose laughter once again, louder than before, even as their laughter trembled at its edges. Meanwhile, humans themselves began to notice changes. Colonists reported dreams filled with unfamiliar landscapes, cities of black stone rising under 3 suns, oceans reflecting skies filled with glowing machines, voices speaking in forgotten tongues that felt strangely familiar. Children sketched star patterns they could not have learned, maps of sectors humanity had never charted. Soldiers handling alien weapons discovered instinctive techniques that made them more effective than their trainers. None of it could be explained, yet none of it could be denied. One fleet commander, desperate for proof, arranged a test in secret. He placed a human crew member inside the chamber of an artifact shaped like a great sphere. For centuries it had been silent. The moment the human entered, the sphere lit with a low hum, and a network of light spread across its surface like veins awakening after a long sleep. The commander nearly fled in terror, for the sphere projected symbols into the air. Symbols identical to those carved into ruins found across the galaxy. Symbols also etched into humanity's earliest stones. The device was old beyond comprehension, yet it responded only to the human as though it had been waiting. This event could not be hidden for long. Rumors spread faster than ships, traveling from one star system to another. Aliens who once mocked humanity now lowered their voices when humans passed. Comedians who once made entire careers out of human jokes began to notice their audiences growing uncomfortable. Merchants who once sold human toys as comedy trinkets stopped, for the laughter of the crowd began to sound forced, like something pressed against fear. The galaxy could sense that something was shifting, though no one wished to say it aloud. In the halls of the council, debates turned bitter. Some called for humanity to be expelled from all galactic dealings, before the relics awakened further. Others insisted that humans must be studied more closely, perhaps controlled before they unlocked secrets too dangerous to share. A smaller group, silent and watchful, believed the truth should remain hidden altogether, for it was safer for all species if humanity never learned who they truly were. But secrets cannot remain buried forever, not when the ruins themselves were rising from the dust to tell the story. Across the stars, humans began to feel the weight of eyes upon them. Every movement was watched, every step measured, every word judged. Yet in their own hearts something else was growing, something like a memory but deeper, older, as if their very blood carried the whispers of empires lost to time. They could not name it, but they could feel it, like the beat of a second heart. The galaxy had mocked, the council had laughed, and the ruins had been dismissed as coincidence. But the stars themselves carried no laughter. They carried silence, patient and unyielding, as more signs emerged to remind all who were watching that humanity was not what the galaxy believed. Humanity was something older, something hidden, and the ruins of forgotten worlds were only the beginning of the story. The ruins were no longer silent. For centuries they had been nothing but broken stone, forgotten walls, and machines that had lost their voice. Yet the moment human hands brushed against their surfaces, they began to stir like beasts roused from slumber. It started with small events, lights flickering faintly at human touch, doors creaking open where no alien had succeeded. But soon the changes grew louder and harder to deny. The relics had been waiting not for the galaxy that ruled now, but for the return of their true heirs. The council could not keep this secret any longer. Reports were spilling across the stars of ancient devices sparking to life in the presence of humans. Fleets carried whispers of humans stepping into forgotten chambers only to awaken weapons, archives, and star maps sealed for millions of years. The evidence piled higher than the laughter that once dismissed it, until silence fell across those who had mocked. They gathered again in the council chamber, their voices no longer confident but strained. The air was thick with fear, yet pride kept them from speaking it openly. One test changed everything. A relic was brought from the edge of the spiral arm, a great black structure shaped like an unbroken sphere. For ages it had remained cold, studied by dozens of alien scientists who could not open its surface. The council, desperate to prove it harmless, ordered a trial. A young human volunteer was chosen, a scientist from Earth with trembling hands but unyielding eyes. He was led into the chamber where the sphere rested in silence. The alien observers filled the galleries above, their gazes sharp, their whispers heavy. The human stepped forward. For a moment, nothing happened. The silence stretched so long that the council began to relax, certain the relic was nothing but a husk. But then the human laid his hand upon the surface. The chamber shook as the sphere erupted with light, lines of fire racing across its body like veins awakening. The floor vibrated beneath their feet, the walls trembled, and then a sound filled the air. Not words, not music, but a pulse that throbbed like a heartbeat older than time. Gasps filled the galleries. Alien leaders recoiled, their limbs twitching in fear. The light from the sphere burst upward into the air, spilling into a star map so vast it filled the chamber from wall to wall. Stars burned in patterns none of them had ever seen. Constellations charted in an age before their empires had risen. At the center of the map glowed a world of oceans and continents, a blue jewel unmistakable to all who looked upon it. It was Earth. The human collapsed to his knees as visions poured through his mind. His eyes widened with terror. His mouth whispered words in a language no one else understood, a language older than any still spoken. He saw battles fought in distant galaxies, ships that burned brighter than suns, cities stretching across worlds now turned to dust. He saw humanity not as it was now, small and fragile, but as it had once been, an empire so vast it touched every corner of the stars. And then he saw it vanish, swallowed by silence, leaving behind only ruins to tell its story. The chamber fell still when the light faded. The human lay shaking on the floor, unable to explain what he had seen while the relic sealed itself once more, returning to its silence as if it had shared enough. The aliens did not laugh this time. Their voices were hushed, filled with unease. If the relics told the truth, then humans were not the young species they mocked, but the descendants of an empire forgotten by time, the true elder species of the galaxy. Fear grew like a shadow across every world. Some species called for the destruction of all relics before humans could awaken more. Others argued that humanity must be placed under strict control, that their rise must be prevented before it could begin. A few, quieter than the rest, began to whisper prayers to the humans, as though they were gods returned from ancient sleep. The balance of power shifted in ways no council could contain. Among humans themselves, the awakening of relics brought both wonder and terror. Colonists who touched artifacts spoke of memories not their own, memories of cities they had never walked and wars they had never fought. Soldiers found their hands guided in combat by instincts that should not exist. Scientists unlocked fragments of knowledge from devices that opened only at their touch. Humanity felt a stirring inside them, a call from the past, though none understood its full meaning. The alien empires that once mocked humanity began to watch them with trembling caution. Where once they had laughed, now they gathered fleets in silence. Armies were stationed near human colonies not to destroy them outright, but to respond should the relics awaken further. Yet despite all their preparations, there was nothing they could do to halt what had already begun. For every relic that awakened led to another, as if the galaxy itself were remembering humanity piece by piece. The historian who had once been ignored now stood before the council with eyes burning. He declared that the galaxy had lived in a lie, that the empires had built their pride upon forgetting what came before. Humanity was not an accident, not a mistake, but the first fire that had once lit the stars. His voice echoed across the chamber, and though many leaders shouted against him, none could deny the truth their own eyes had seen. The relics were awake. Humanity's presence stirred them like the return of a long-lost master, and each pulse of light reminded the galaxy that their throne was not as secure as they believed. The council tried to contain the fear, but whispers spread faster than their decrees. Across the stars, aliens who had once mocked humanity now lowered their heads when a human passed. The joke had died, replaced by silence too heavy to ignore. The galaxy had thought humans were children, stumbling into space for the first time. Now they faced the possibility that humanity was older than them all, that the ones they mocked were in truth the rightful heirs of the stars. And as the relics stirred from their long sleep, one question grew heavier with each passing day. What else would awaken when humanity touched the forgotten past again? The awakening of the relics did not stop with one chamber or one artifact. Across the galaxy, wherever a human walked near the ruins of forgotten worlds, doors that had been sealed for millions of years began to open. Structures that had resisted every tool and weapon bent to the presence of soft human hands. What was once dismissed as coincidence became an undeniable truth. The relics remembered them. It was not the council's fleets or the alien scholars who unlocked the past, but the humans themselves, and with each awakening, the galaxy was forced to face a reality they had buried beneath centuries of arrogance. The visions began soon after. Humans who touched the relics spoke of dreams that felt too vivid to be illusions. They described standing in towering cities of black stone beneath skies lit by 3 suns, cities that no world in the present galaxy possessed. They described fleets of ships so vast they blotted out the stars, weapons that could crack entire planets, and voices speaking in languages no human alive had learned yet somehow understood. At first, these visions were dismissed as madness brought by stress. But when hundreds of humans across different colonies reported the same images, The council could no longer deny that something deeper was stirring. Soldiers felt it in battle. When human Marines trained with alien weapons, their instincts moved faster than thought. They fired with precision, reacted with perfect timing, and at times knew how to repair or modify technology they had never studied. Colonists felt it when their children, barely able to read, began sketching star charts of systems humanity had not yet visited. Scientists felt it when devices unlocked themselves in their presence, releasing fragments of data that even the oldest alien civilizations could not decipher. The whispers grew into a storm. Humanity was not learning these skills. They were remembering them. Their blood carried memories too ancient for reason, knowledge that should have been erased by time but remained hidden like embers beneath ash. The historian who had once been mocked stood before the council again, his voice steady, declaring that these were not accidents. He explained that memory could exist beyond minds, that the very essence of humanity might carry echoes of their lost empire. The chamber that had once laughed at him now trembled in silence. Aliens who had once mocked humans began to fear their very presence. On colonies shared with other species, doors closed quietly when humans passed. Markets grew still when they entered. Even in laughter there was unease, as though everyone was waiting for humanity to awaken something far greater than relics. Fleets patrolled near human systems, but their commanders admitted in secret that they were not prepared for what might rise. They feared not the humans as they were now, but the humans they were becoming. Humans who might remember everything. And among the humans themselves, a strange unity began to grow. They had always been divided by borders, governments, and rivalries, but the visions carried no such divisions. A miner on a distant moon described the same dream as a scientist on Earth. A soldier saw the same battle as a child born on Mars. It was as though an ancient voice was rising within all of them, binding them together with memories they could not escape. The laughter of the galaxy had turned into silence, but within that silence, humans began to speak to one another with a new kind of certainty. They were not outsiders, not children wandering into someone else's domain. They were coming home, yet with memory came fear. Some humans woke from visions screaming, unable to bear the weight of what they saw. Wars so vast entire galaxies burned, betrayals that shattered empires, and a silence so complete it erased nearly everything they had built. Others feared that by awakening the past they would repeat its mistakes. The council fed this fear, spreading messages across the stars that humanity's memories were dangerous, that if left unchecked, they would unleash destruction again. But these warnings rang hollow, for it was not the humans who seemed afraid of repeating the past. It was the aliens who feared what would happen if humans fully remembered it. The relics continued to respond. Great machines hidden beneath worlds began to hum with life. Weapons locked away in the bones of dead planets glowed when humans approached. Ancient star maps revealed hidden paths that aligned with routes only humanity could travel. Entire fleets, long dormant, turned their dead eyes to the stars as if waiting for a command. The galaxy's rulers, once so certain of their place, now trembled with the knowledge that the universe itself might obey another master. The humans did not yet claim power, but power was claiming them. They found themselves able to guide ships through storms of radiation no alien navigator could survive. They discovered ways to speak to machines that had no known language. They became the key to a story written before history began. And while many among them feared what they were becoming, others began to feel pride, a burning fire that whispered they were not mocked children but heirs to a forgotten throne. The council met in secret sessions filled with panic. Some called for immediate war to end the threat before it grew. Others argued that war would only awaken more relics, that violence would serve as the trigger for humanity's full return. A few leaders, quiet but watchful, admitted what none wished to say aloud, that perhaps humanity had never truly left, that they had only been waiting for the time when the galaxy would once again need to remember them. Across the stars, the laughter had died. In its place was the sound of doors opening, of machines stirring, of voices rising in human throats that spoke words older than their species' known history. The forgotten memory was no longer buried. It had returned, and it carried with it the weight of empires and the promise of reckoning. The galaxy that had mocked now stood in uneasy silence, for the question was no longer if humanity would remember, but when, and what would happen to all others once they did. The galaxy that once filled its halls with laughter now sat in the silence of fear. The relics had awakened. The memories had returned, and the truth could no longer be buried. Humanity was no longer the fragile child species mocked in council chambers. They were something far older, something the stars themselves seemed to recognize. Everywhere the relic stirred, the same message repeated. Humanity was not beginning its story, it was continuing one. The empires that ruled now were not builders of the First Order. They were caretakers of a throne left behind, and the rightful heirs had returned. The council gathered under its dome of artificial stars, but this time no laughter echoed through the chamber. Voices trembled, tones cracked, and eyes darted nervously toward the human envoy who now stood with a presence that none dared mock. The crystalline leader who once declared humanity a child of the stars spoke again, but his words held no arrogance. He demanded that humanity surrender the relics, that they step away from the ruins and allow the council to keep them under lock. His voice rang like glass, but even as it filled the chamber, it felt weak, a plea disguised as command. The human envoy did not raise their voice, yet the silence that followed their words was louder than any laughter that had come before. They reminded the council that the relics had chosen, that the machines had not awakened for crystalline, reptilian, or insectoid hands, but only for humans. They reminded them that the visions and the memories were not lies created by desperate minds, but truths carried in the blood of every human. The envoy's voice did not boast, but every alien in the chamber heard the weight of history in their words. For the first time, the galaxy understood that humanity did not need to demand respect. It was owed to them by time itself. Fear rippled outward. Fleets were mobilized not for war but for containment. Dozens of worlds placed restrictions on humans, trying to prevent them from touching more relics. But the effort was useless. The relics were spread across too many systems, hidden in too many forgotten corners, and humanity's reach was growing every day. Each attempt to suppress them only strengthened the feeling that destiny was pulling them forward. Humans could no longer be ignored or dismissed. They were awakening, and the galaxy was watching. In the shadows of fear, however, resistance formed. Some empires plotted to destroy humanity before their power could fully rise. They whispered of secret fleets, of weapons built in the darkness, and of plans to erase Earth from existence. Yet even among those who planned destruction, doubt gnawed at their hearts. The relics that had awakened seemed to watch, and those who raised arms against humans felt as if unseen eyes were upon them. Ships malfunctioned, plans fell apart, and commanders found themselves haunted by visions that mirrored those the humans spoke of. The past was not silent, and it seemed determined to protect its heirs. Among humanity, a great divide grew. Some called for caution, fearing the weight of memory. They believed their ancestors had fallen for a reason, that the empire had been destroyed by its own pride and power, and that repeating the past would mean repeating its end. Others, however, embraced the fire rising within them. They saw the fear in alien eyes, the silence replacing laughter, and they believed it was proof of destiny. They wanted to reclaim the throne, to rise again as rulers of the stars, and to remind the galaxy who the true elder species was.